All right, so we're going through the first section of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and this section essentially focuses on SNAP cuts, aka food stamps. So this will just be a brief overview, and then later on in the video, it'll go into each section specifically. So Section 10101, that talks about the Thrifty Food Plan. So basically, it's updating the United States Code to reflect a previous law that was passed in the Farm Bill of 2018, and that basically required the Secretary of Agriculture to set up the Thrifty Food Plan to meet some goals. So one of which was to make no distinction between low-income households and high-income households in regards to food quality, right? So just because you can have a cheaper food budget, buying potato chips and soda doesn't mean that's what they should set the SNAP benefits on. The second one was setting a household adjustment scale for SNAP benefits. So basically, the SNAP benefits are set using basically a typical like family of four, with like a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old or something. And so the new scale basically lowers the benefit amount for if you have like a household of three people, and increases the amount of benefits for if you have like a household of like seven people. And it also set specific cost adjustments for Hawaii and Alaska. Well, obviously, because food is priced differently in both those states. It set specific cost adjustments for Guam and the Virgin Islands. Those cannot be more than the lower 48. And then it gave the Secretary of Agriculture the option to revise the Thrifty Food Plan after 2027. So originally in the Farm Bill, it required the Secretary of Agriculture to revise the plan every 5 years. This just says that he has the option to revise it and then doesn't say if he needs to do it again or again. So I'm not sure what the legality is of that, but that's what it is. So Section 10102 of the Big Beautiful Bill changes the work requirements for SNAP benefits. So typically, in order to get SNAP benefits, you need to work 20 hours a week or more, or be on unemployment. So, or you don't have to do those if you meet certain exclusions. So this kind of removes the free ride for a lot of Americans to exploit. The biggest being veterans and homeless. So the current law is that if you're homeless or a veteran, you automatically qualify for SNAP benefits, and you don't need to meet those work requirements. So those have been removed. However, the new thing is that they added Native Americans. I think typically this is probably because some of the poorest counties in America are Native American reservations. So they're removing, the work requirements for the homeless. Homeless, veterans, and foster care children under the age of 24. And they're giving it to Native Americans. They're also changing the exemption age for the elderly from 55 to 65. So obviously that would remove a lot of people from SNAP. They're also changing the definition of a dependent child from 18 to 14. So obviously the idea is that you have a working age child in your home, then someone in the home will meet the work requirements, right? And then they've also kept pregnant and disabled exemptions. So if you're a pregnant woman or under the age of 18 or disabled or in retirement, then you don't have to meet the work requirements in order to get SNAP benefits or food stamps, basically. So that's going to probably remove a lot of Americans from the SNAP program. And so Section 10103 is cutting energy assistance program. So as part of SNAP, you're allowed to basically get a stipend for energy recovery or energy assistance, right, to pay part of your rent or your utilities bills. And all this does is so what this does is it changes the definition of what a household is. So it changes it from a low income household to now you have to be a low income household. In addition to, you also have to be an elderly person or you have to be a disabled person. So they're basically cutting energy assistance for a lot of people, it looks like, and removing a lot of people from this energy assistance program. Um, the next thing they're doing is in section 10104 is they're removing internet as a utility for SNAP income deduction. So there's a special deduction called the shelter deduction, where basically you get to deduct your rent and your utilities at a percentage rate from your income, and then that income is used to calculate your benefits for food stamps, right? So I guess internet is no longer considered a utility, so you can't be at it. It can't be calculated with the deduction. It's not going to actually change a whole lot of things. It might remove some people from the SNAP plan. I'm not sure. I'm not a huge expert on this stuff. Section 10105 is cutting down on SNAP fraud. So basically, this is creating a kind of a quality control program or quality assurance program to incentivize states to basically crack down on fraud within the SNAP program or the food stamps program. And it's doing this by doing kind of like a reverse incentive program. So if you have a low error rate of less than 6%, right, for people that don't qualify for SNAP but are using it, are or a whole or stay on SNAP for too long, right? If you have a low error rate under 6%, you'll get 100% federal funding for the SNAP program as a state. If you have a high error rate greater than 10%, you'll only get 85% of federal funding for the SNAP program. But and you as the state would have to make up the remaining 15%. So this theoretically would crack down on fraud by making the states more accountable, as there's a penalty for having a higher error rate where there was not before. Section 10106 is cutting the federal cost sharing of administrative SNAP costs in half. So currently there's a cost sharing program between admin costs for the SNAP program. So like signing up people, filing paperwork, having the IT network, all that kind of stuff. It is currently 50% between the federal government, 50% through the state. And so that's been cut in half. So now it's going to be 75% of the administrative costs will have to be covered by the state, and only 25% of the costs will be covered by the federal government. And I think the idea is that obviously the state will be more efficient than the federal government will. Section 10107 is cutting funding to the National Education and Obesity Prevention Grant Program. And so basically, this is a grant program for educating low Americans about the dangers of obesity and the importance of exercise. It costs approximately $500 million per year. So, and it was funded indefinitely. So this seems like a pretty good idea. Section 10108 strips the Attorney General of power to authorize SNAP benefits to illegal aliens. So no more SNAP benefits for illegal aliens. There is an exception for immigrants coming from Cuba or Haiti. And I think the idea behind that is that Florida is a very Republican state. Obviously, the Republicans have the majority. So, and Cubans and Haitians are pretty pro-American and have been here for a few decades. So I think the idea is that Cubans and Haitians will still be able to qualify for SNAP if they're immigrants. This also allows people living in U.S. territories such as Guam, America, Samoa, Puerto Rico to also get SNAP benefits. However, what it does is it strips, there's like an exclusion or exemption where the Attorney General can exclude groups from receiving SNAP, make exceptions for certain immigrant groups to receive SNAP benefits. That's basically been stripped completely. The AG no longer has that power at all. And basically, no illegal aliens are allowed to get SNAP benefits at this point. So, next I'm going to go into each one of these specific items in its own in more in depth. And so this is the big, really section one, the snap cuts to the big beautiful bill. All right. We're looking at section 10101 of the big beautiful bill that just passed. And this is called reevaluation of the thrifty food plan. So, just a little bit of background. The thrifty food plan is what the USDA or whoever uses to set the limits for SNAP or like food stamps, basically. So, in 2018, in the Farm Bill, they went ahead and passed this stuff. So it said the thrifty food plan means the diet required to feed a family of four, consisting of a man, a woman, and basically a family of four. So by 2022, after 5-year intervals, the Secretary shall reevaluate and publish market data for the thrifty food plan. And basically, this stuff goes all the way back to like the 40s and FDR and whatnot. So basically, what it originally said, and this is the current law getting replaced by the new law, is they wanted to make a household size adjustment scale, make cost adjustments to the plan for Hawaii and Alaska, make cost adjustments to the plan in Guam and the Virgin Islands, and then reevaluate the plan every so years and whatnot. And so here's what the new law states, and it's basically just meeting off these goals for the thrifty food plan. And so, in general, Section 3 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP benefits or food stamps, is amended by striking subsection U and inserting the following. So if you see, this is subsection U in the original bill, and this is what the new one will say. So the thrifty food plan. In general, the term thrifty food plan means the diet required to feed a family of four persons consisting of a man and a woman ages 20 through 50, a child ages 6 through 8, and a child ages 9 through 11, using the items and quantities of food described in the report of the Department of Agriculture entitled Thrifty Food Plan 2021. And so I will link that in the description. It's like a 125-page document, kind of going into the details of how they model. Basically, it says we have a market basket that this is what the average household spends in America on groceries on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis. And then it sets the SNAP benefits based on the thrifty food plan. And so each successor report updated pursuant to this subsection subsection subject to the conditions that A, the relevant market baskets, right? So that's like how much is charged, how much each household buys in groceries per week of the thrifty food plan shall only be changed pursuant to paragraph 4. So that's down here. B, the cost of the thrifty food plan shall be the basis for uniform allotments for all households, regardless of the actual compensation of the household. So that was kind of saying there's like some discrepancies between lower income and higher income. So they kind of grouped it all together in their models. It gets kind of technical. I'm not an expert on it. You can really, if you really want to deep dive into it, you can go ahead and read that report from 2021. And C, the cost of the thrifty food plan may only be adjusted in accordance with this subsection. So here's kind of what this was saying. It said, make a household adjustment scale, basically. And so it's based on for a 4-person household, right? And so if you have a 3-person household, you have a little bit less. So if you set the rate at $100, it would be $79 for a 3-person household, $30 for a 1-person household, right? This is for SNAP benefits. And it actually goes all the way up to an 18-person household. So under this condition, so a household's 9. So anything over a 9-person household gets an additional 22% up to 200% in total, or 18-person household. So I wonder if they're trying to, I mean, obviously kind of future-proof it, but maybe they're doing something for orphanages or things like that. So 3, allowable cost adjustments. So the Secretary of Agriculture shall make cost adjustments in the thrifty food plan for Hawaii and the urban and rural parts of Alaska to reflect the cost of food in Hawaii and urban and rural Alaska. So B, make cost adjustments in the separate thrifty food plan for Guam and the Virgin Islands of the United States to reflect the cost of food in those states, but to not exceed the cost of the food in the other 50 states and the District of Columbia. So basically, Guam and the Virgin Islands cannot get higher SNAP benefits than the continental United States. And on October 1st, 2025, and each October 1st after or thereafter, adjust the cost of the thrifty food plan to reflect changes in the consumer price index for all urban consumers. So there is a definition right there. So it's not based on rural and urban, it's just based on urban consumers or the urban inflation, which typically is higher than rural areas. So that's good for rural areas, published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the Department of Labor for the most recent 12-month period. So basically, the plan has to be adjusted each year for inflation. And then here's where it's a condition 4. Here's condition 4. So every like 5 years, and based on the Farm Bill, the thrifty food plan will get reevaluated. And that's kind of what the 2018 Farm Bill said. So reevaluation of market baskets, reevaluation. So not earlier than October 1st, 2027, the secretary may. And so this is what's interesting right here is before I think it was required. Now it says the secretary can basically do this if they want to, or they don't have to. So they may reevaluate the market baskets of the thrifty food plan after October 1st, 2027, based on current food prices, food composition data, consumption patterns, and dietary guidance. And then it has to be cost neutral. So cost neutrality, so the secretary shall not increase the cost of the thrifty food plan based on a reevaluation under this paragraph. And so that goes in line with the stuff in the past. So basically the Secretary of Agriculture cannot increase the amount of benefits that SNAP receives. They must just evaluate it based on the market conditions and then adjust it for inflation. And so they kind of have an option after 2027 to adjust it again if they would like to. And then I guess they don't have to ever do it again or not. So not a SNAP expert, but this is kind of what this is saying. This right here kind of just is legal or jargon to say that things of the act are moving around basically. So like you move a line of code up here and there. So this section is pretty straightforward. Basically, all it's doing is taking the conditions from the current law and updating it accordingly. So this is not, and then you kind of have this sliding scale. And so this is to set SNAP benefits. All right, this is section 10102 of the Big Beautiful Bill, otherwise known as Modifications to SNAP Work Requirements for Able-Bodied Adults, aka food stamps. So if you want to have food stamps, you need to meet a work requirement if you're able to. And this kind of changes those exceptions. So exception, section 60 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP or food stamps, is amended by striking paragraph 3 and inserting the following. So in order to understand what was changed, let's look at what the original bill was. Paragraph 3 is what was changed, and it relates to paragraph 2, the work requirements for SNAP programs. So subject to the other provisions of this subsection, no individual shall be eligible to participate in the SNAP program if they didn't work, basically. So that you must work 20 hours or more per week, or you must be in some kind of program such as unemployment. And so the exemptions are, well, if you're under 18, you don't need to work 20 hours a week. They'll just give you food stamps. Or what it used to be, they changed these, but it used to be currently what it is if you're 55 years or older, you don't need to meet those work requirements in order to receive food stamps. Now they changed this to be 65 years of age or older. So that's going to affect a lot of people. Now, unless you're retired, you have to work at least 20 hours a week or be on unemployment in order to get food stamps. And so The other thing they changed is that a parent or other member of a household with responsibility for a dependent child. So, dependent child is typically 18 years of age or younger. They changed that to be a dependent child under the 14 years of age. So, you can't just have teenagers um, that are of working age. You have to have non working kids um, in order to qualify for SNAP without the 20 hours per week working requirement. Now, the other things they change is kind of interesting to me. So it used to be, or currently is, that if you're homeless, if you're a veteran, or if you're a foster care kid under the age of 24, that you can just get food stamps without doing anything, without working or meeting these work requirements of paragraph two. So now they took away those. However, they added in Native Americans. So right here it says an Indian or an urban Indian, as such terms are defined in paragraph 13 and 28 of section 4 of the Indian Health Care Improvement Act, or a California Indian described in section 809A of the Indian Health Care Improvement Act. So currently it is if you're homeless or a veteran or in the foster care system, you don't have to meet those work requirements in order to get food stamps. They've removed those and they've added that exception for Native Americans. In now, the next part of this is kind of confusing and honestly doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they added this at all. But B, standardizing enforcement, section 604 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP or food stamps, is amended. The original allowed a waiver in general that on the request of a state agency with the support of the chief executive officer of the state, the Secretary of Agriculture may waive the applicability of paragraph two, otherwise known as the work requirements, so to any groups of individuals in the state if the Secretary of Agriculture makes a determination that the area in which the individuals reside has an unemployment rate of over 10% or does not have a sufficient number of jobs to provide unemployment for the individuals. So then they also have to do this reporting requirement. So basically, there is a waiver. The state can come in and request from the Department of Agriculture to waive those requirements if they have a high unemployment rate or if they have not enough jobs. And so, unfortunately, and I see kind of why they changed this. They changed this part because it's very ambiguous, right? So it says does not have a sufficient number of jobs, right? But that's not really defined anywhere. And so they basically remove this in the new part. It says in subparagraph A, by striking clause two and inserting the following two is in a non-contiguous state, and that's defined right here as basically Alaska, Hawaii, but does not include Guam or the Virgin Islands. So it is a non-contiguous state, otherwise known as Alaska or Hawaii, and has an unemployment rate that is at or above 1.5 times the national unemployment rate. So basically, they removed this clause and said, well, that's very ambiguous. So unless you have an unemployment rate of over 10%, now you don't get to waive those work requirements. People still have to work for SNAP. So a lot of people are going to get kicked off of SNAP because of this. And so it is in a non-contiguous state. And so basically, if Hawaii or Alaska has 50% more unemployment than the lower 48, then they can go to the Department of Agriculture. And so that's probably just not going to happen. So I'm not exactly sure why they put this in. I think probably there was they wanted to get a congressman from Alaska and Hawaii to be on board and vote for the bill or something. I don't really know. And they have in here exclusions and other things. And right here it says, subject to subparagraph D, the secretary may exempt individuals, so in a Hawaii or Alaska, from the work requirements if the state requests it, and it's in good faith, and they have the definition for good faith. However, they also have down here that duration of the exemption. So in general, an exemption granted under subparagraph B up here shall expire not later than December 31st, 2028, and may not be renewed. So basically, once 2029 rolls around, Alaska and Hawaii cannot request exemptions at all. So I'm not exactly sure why they put this in. It seems like it's probably not going to do anything. I guess the language is there in case they want to amend it in the future. Um, but the big thing about this section is the big change to the SNAP benefits. Basically, you're going to have to work to receive SNAP benefits unless you're a Native American or retired or a child or parents. And then obviously they still kept these same conditions. So if you're medically certified as physically or mentally unfit for unemployment, or if you're pregnant, pregnant woman. So this will probably affect a lot of people. Basically, you're going to have to work for your SNAP benefits or your food stamps at least 20 hours a week. So, all right, we're looking at section 10103 of the Big Beautiful Bill. This is availability of standard utility allowances based on receipt of energy assistance. So, what does that mean? That means that the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Act of 1981 basically means if you're low income, you can get energy assistance. So they're kind of gutting this a little bit. If we see here, it says A, the Standard Utility Allowance, Section 5E6C4I of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP benefits, is amending by inserting with an elderly or disabled member after household. So what does that mean? It means that normally in the past or currently, you had low income households could receive energy, benefits such as like reduced energy allowance incomes or waivers for your electricity bill or whatnot. Now this is basically gutting this to say that your household, your low income household, it will only work if you're also elderly, like you're retired over the age of 65, or disabled, probably under the American Disability Act or whatnot. So no longer will it be low income only, it'll be low income plus being elderly or disabled. So we can actually look at what was changed. So in the original, everything in orange is the original text, and all they're adding is this. So before it would say, subject to subclause 2, if a state agency elects to use a standard utility allowance that reflects heating and cooling costs, the standard utility allowance shall be made available to households, referencing low income households, that received a payment or on behalf of which a payment was made under the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Act of 1981 or other similar energy assistance programs. If you are a current month or in the immediately preceding months, the household either receives such payment. Yada, yada, yada. So basically, it added this part right here in the italics. So it changed households to households with an elderly or disabled member. And so energy assistance for low income households is basically gone. At least that's what I think this kind of is stating. And the next part of the change of section 10103 is doing the same thing for eligible households, assistance to third parties, including educational benefits exceptions, right? So third party energy assistance payments. So I'm not exactly sure what consists of third party, but those have to take into account now to provide energy assistance to a household, right? So it says energy assistance payments for purposes of subsection D1. A payment may made under a state law to provide other than a law referred to in paragraph 2G to provide energy assistance to a household without an elderly or disabled member shall be considered money payable directly to that household. So states can still do that, but for tax purposes, they don't get a tax discount now unless they're elderly or disabled. So pretty basic thing here, but that will probably cut a lot of funding or assistance to a lot of people. So. All right, so back to it, the big beautiful bill. This is section 10104, restrictions on internet expenses. So this also has to do with SNAP benefits. And basically, this has to do, if we do a little background, this has to do with the shelter deduction changes. So just kind of going over the SNAP rules allow you to deduct shelter expenses that exceed half of your net income, but not a dollar for dollar deduction of shelter costs. So what does that mean? An example is Rita's total shelter expenses are $1,552 per month, which means she pays $700 rent, $852 in utilities, which includes heating and cooling, uh, heat, electricity, phone, and internet. Her gross earnings are $1,500 a month for her net income, but after this deduction, her gross earnings are $1,000 per month. So, in order for her SNAP benefits, although she makes $1,500 a month because of this deduction, it's more like she makes $1,000 per month in the eyes of like the food stamp program and whatnot. So, what is this changing? Basically, all it is saying is that you can no longer include your internet charges in with this deduction. So, before, if your internet was like $50 a month or whatever, no longer will you be allowed to do that for the deduction. So, does it make that big of a change? Probably not that much, but basically it's saying your internet is not a critical utility. So what the new law states is Section 5E6 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP benefits or food stamps, is amended by adding at the end of the following. So this is the original law in orange. Basically, this is giving the excess shelter expense deduction, or more known as the shelter deduction. And so at the very, very end of this, they're adding this new paragraph right here that says restrictions on internet expenses. So any service fee associated with internet connection shall not be used in computing the excess shelter expense deduction under this paragraph. So basically, your internet's not a utility for SNAP benefits anymore. So that's all this section says. Pretty straightforward. And that's it. All right. This is section 10105 of the Big Beautiful Bill. It says matching fund requirements. Essentially, this is to cut down on SNAP fraud or food stamp fraud. So we'll get into it. So it says A, in general, Section 4A of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP or food stamps, is amended by striking this right here and inserting the following: one, establishment. So basically, they're expanding on this section, establishment of supplemental nutrition or SNAP program, and they're adding all this stuff. So not this stuff right here, but they're adding all these paragraphs. And essentially, what this is a quality control measure. So they're adding these two words basically to make paragraph one, and then they're adding a bunch of paragraph two. So and so two, by adding the end of the following: two, state quality control incentive. So definition of payment error rate in this paragraph is the same term. Payment error rate has the same meaning given in the term of section 16C2. So I have that definition right here. It's in administrative cost sharing and quality control. So the error rate, as used, is the term. Payment error rate means the sum of the point estimates of an overpayment error rate and an underpayment error rate determined by the Secretary of Agriculture for data collected in a probability sample of participating households, so households participating in the food stamp program. The term overpayment error rate means the percentage of a value of all allotment issues in a fiscal year by the state agency that are either issued to households that fail to meet basic program eligibility requirements or over issued to eligible households. So basically, did you get overfunded in SNAP? Did you get underfunded in SNAP? What is the error rate? And so this establishment of the state quality control incentive basically creates this state cost share. So if you have states with a very low error rate, they're going to get 100% of their funding met by federal funds. If they have a high error rate, they're going to get 85% of their funding. So we'll go through it, what it says. So in general, subject to clause 3, beginning the fiscal year, so beginning in 2028, if the payment error rate of a state as determined under clause 2 is 1, less than 6%, the federal share of the cost of the allotment described in paragraph 1 for the state in a fiscal year shall be 100%. So this is paragraph 1 up here, basically giving SNAP benefits to states. Um, and the state share shall be 0. So if they have less than a 6% error rate, then the federal program will fund it. If it's equal to or greater than 6%, but less than 8%, the federal share rate of the cost allotment described in paragraph 1 for the state in the fiscal year shall be 95%. The state share shall be 5%. So as their error rate increases, so if it's greater than 8% but less than 10%, the federal funds will go down to 90. And if it's equal to or greater than 10%, the federal funds will go down to 85%. So if there's a lot of SNAP fraud, basically what's going to happen is the states are going to be on the hook for paying for their own SNAP benefits. So it's basically incentivizing SNAP fraud to not happen. And this starts in fiscal year 2028. So elections, fiscal year 2028 for fiscal year 2028. To calculate the applicable state share under Clause I, a state may elect to use the payment error rate of the state from fiscal year 2025 or 2026. So this will probably go into effect fairly quickly. So that way they can establish the error rate. Fiscal year 2029 and thereafter for fiscal year 2029 and each fiscal year thereafter to calculate the applicable state share under Clause I, the Secretary of Agriculture shall use the payment error rate of the state for the third fiscal year preceding the fiscal year for which the state share is being calculated. So delayed implementation. So fiscal year 2025. If fiscal year 2025, the payment error rate of the state multiplied by 1.5 is equal to or above 20%, the implementation data under Clause I for that state shall be fiscal year 2029. If for 2026, the payment error rate of a state multiplied by 1.5 is equal to or above 20%, the implementation date for Clause I shall be fiscal year 2030. So if it's, I was kind of seeing the same, equal to or above 20%, equal to or above 20%. Anyway, the maximum federal payment the secretary may not pay towards the cost of an allotment described in paragraph 1 and amount that is greater than the applicable federal share under paragraph 2. So in part B, it basically adds this section right here referencing this paragraph under this. So that's all that says. So basically this creation of this state cost share program is what this section of the Big Beautiful Bill is doing. All right, section 10106 of the Big Beautiful Bill is very straightforward. Administrative cost sharing of SNAP benefits. Basically, they're cutting the federal funding for administrative costs in half. So this will incentivize states to be more efficient with their administrative costs for SNAP benefits. So let's see what it says. So Section 16A of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP or food stamps, is amended in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking agency on an amount equal to 50% and inserting agency through fiscal year 2026 50%, and for fiscal year 2027 and each fiscal year thereafter 25%. So what does that mean? If we go down here to the original law, we can see what was struck and what is rewritten. So administrative cost sharing and quality control for the SNAP program or food stamp program, administrative costs. So subject to subsection K, the secretary is authorized to pay each state agency through fiscal year 2026 50%, and for fiscal year 2027 and each fiscal year thereafter 25% of all administrative costs involved in each state agency's operations of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP. And then it kind of goes into the different things that is qualified under administrative costs, and nothing was changed. But basically, the big change was it went from 50% of the cost sharing down to 25% of the cost sharing. So they're moving a lot of the administrative costs from the federal government to the actual states themselves. So that's what this section does. All right, looking at section 10107 of the Big Beautiful Bill, known as the National Education and Obesity Prevention Grant Program. Basically, they're cutting funding to this program. So, what is the National Education and Obesity Prevention Grant Program? Basically, it's primarily through SNAP Ed or SNAP Education and aims to promote healthy eating and physical activity among low income populations in the US. So maybe like NFL Play 60 or something like that. Not really sure what is involved in that. Basically, what it says is Section 28D1F of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as the SNAP program or food stamps, is amended by striking for fiscal year 2016 in each subsequent, fiscal year and inserting for each of fiscal years 2016 through 2025. So what does that mean? Here we have the original law in orange, and they're changing condition F to say instead of 2016 each year thereafter, 2016 through 2025. Obviously, this is 2025 right now. So at 2026, the funding stops. Basically, it says it'll give funding for 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and then in 2016, they just extended it forever. This basically says no more. People have been educated enough. We're going to cut funding to this program. And it looks like it was around $500 billion per year because it was as adjusted to reflect any increase for the 12 months. So it was adjusted for inflation based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So it was probably $500 billion per year. So they said no more to this program. So that's what this section does of the Big Beautiful Bill. All right, this is section 1018 of the Big Beautiful Bill, talking about alien SNAP eligibility, basically SNAP benefits for illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants, etc. So basically, they've kind of changed a lot. They didn't write it as nice as the other ones. So basically, anything in white is the change, is the new change. Anything in orange is the original bill, and I kind of split it up so we can see what actually changed. Things that changed are going to be highlighted, and then at the very end we can look at the original bill altogether, and then things in green reference a different act. So let's go ahead and start. So it says Section 6F of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, otherwise known as SNAP benefits or food stamps, is amended to read as follows. So they're changing the subsection F. The first part has not changed. This part has not changed. This part has not changed. For some reason, they added a citizen or national of the United States. So we'll go ahead and read through this. So no individual who is a member of a household otherwise eligible to participate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, under this section shall be eligible to participate in the SNAP program as a member of that or any other household unless he or she is a resident of the United States and either a citizen or national of the United States and these are the exceptions. So in this first one, it looks like they just changed the formatting. So an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence as an immigrant, as defined by Section 101A15 and 101A20 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. And that's pretty complicated. Basically, it's mainly just like UN ambassadors, crew members from other countries in good faith, basically people who are visitors for some reason or another, not someone you would conventionally think of as an illegal alien or an undocumented immigrant. So, excluding others among aliens, visitors, tourists, diplomats, and students who enter the United States temporarily with no intention of abandoning their residence in a foreign country. And so all that was changed is just minor formatting, I think, to reference an updated amendment to this act. I'm not exactly sure. What did change is C. So before, and so it's actually C, D, E, and F, and we'll go through those in the end, but we'll just see what they changed it to. And basically, they said One of the exceptions is if you're an alien who has been granted the status of Cuban or Haitian entrants, as defined in the Refuge Education Assistance Act of 1980. So most likely, right, Florida is a very Republican state. The Republicans have a majority. There's a lot of Cubans and Haitians in Florida. So this is probably mostly political. I do know a lot of Cubans and Haitians are pretty positive towards America, and they've been there for several decades at this point. So Cuban and Haitian entrants, as defined right here, means any individual granted parole status as a Cuban or Haitian entrant or granted any other special status subsequently established under the immigration laws for nationals of Cuba or Haiti. Basically, friendly immigration statuses between Cuba and Haiti, and obviously the United States. So that's fairly straightforward. The next part is an individual who lawfully resides in the United States in accordance with a compact of free association referred to in Section 402B2G of the Personnel, Responsibility, and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. So, what does that mean? Basically, if you're in the federal states of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, or any of the territories of the United States, right? So, Palau, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, or Mariana Islands, or Samoa, then you're also allowed to, have food SNAP benefits as well. So if you're Cuban or Haitian, or you're one of the American territories, you're still allowed to have SNAP benefits. Now let's look at what was removed, basically D, E, and F, and we'll go through this last. So C, D, E, and F were changed a lot. C is an alien who entered the United States prior to, and mainly what it is it's giving a lot of power to the Attorney General to designate illegal aliens that are able to get SNAP benefits for one reason or another. So that was all removed. Now you have to be a citizen of the United States, Cuba or Haiti, or one of the U.S. territories. So there basically no aliens can get SNAP benefits for any reason at this point. It seems like so we can see that right, an alien who has qualified for conditional entry pursuant to Section 1157 and 1158 of the Immigration. Let's see, the Immigration and Nationality Act. And an alien who is lawfully present in the United States as a result of an exercise of discretion by the Attorney General for emergent reasons or reasons deemed strictly in the public interest. An alien within the United States to whom the Attorney General has withheld deportation pursuant to subject. So, like, I think the Dreamers is kind of what that's referencing. And so basically, this strips the Attorney General of the right to give SNAP benefits to illegal aliens for any reason. And so lastly, this last part has not changed. The income less a state option, a pro rata share, and financial resources of the individual rendered ineligible to participate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program SNAP under this subsection shall be considered in determining the eligibility and the value of the allotment of the household of which such individual is a member. So those are the big changes. Basically, no more aliens on SNAP. I'm sure that's probably an issue. I'm not a SNAP expert by any means, but I can imagine that is an issue right now. So no more illegal aliens getting SNAP benefits is basically what this section says.